Dolphin Blue is a game released for the Atomiswave arcade system in 2003, developed by Sammy. If you don't know what the Atomiswave is, then you wouldn't be alone, but it's basically an arcade version of the Sega Dreamcast. This is different from the Sega Naomi, which is also similar to the Dreamcast, in that the Atomiswave had basically the same capabilities, whereas the Naomi was a bit stronger. Because of this close connection to the Dreamcast, Atomiswave games work great on the same emulators, so that's how we are going to play this game today. The game starts off with a bit of exposition. Basically, it's the future, and the world is all sunk, and there is a good faction and an evil faction, and you have to fight against the evil faction. Not award-winning stuff, but it gets the game going. There's also something to do with the princess too, I think. It's hard to make out as I don't read Japanese. So when the game gets going, it's clear the kind of game that this is. It's a side-scrolling run and gun style shooter, a la Metal Slug. And first impressions are really good. The 2D pixel art is very well done, and I really like the animations, both from the main characters and all the enemies, not to mention everything going on in the background. It looks nice. The 3D graphics aren't amazing, but they do complement the game well, and the game does a fairly good job at integrating the two styles. Right away, it's obvious why the game is called Dolphin Blue, and that's because your main sidekick throughout the adventure is a dolphin that you can ride. It's your companion throughout and stays with you, even utilising a special attack of its own. First impressions of the combat are pretty good too, although you can't shoot in all directions, only up and down, and then somewhat in between, but so far so good. I'm enjoying it, and it's nice to play a game with a bit of colour in it, after the grey landscapes of Swords of Destiny. First boss is this big crab robot thing, and I like it. Cool design, definitely looks bad and evil, and is quite challenging. Worth mentioning that because this is an arcade game on an emulator, I can put in as many coins as I want, which is necessary because this game gets challenging and I die a lot. You have a number of different weapons that you can find in the game, such as a Gatling gun, rockets, a few other explosive things, and a hyper Gatling gun that seems to drop whenever you die a load, which means it drops a lot for me. Next part of the game sees you swimming underneath this big ship before scaling on top of it, destroying all the baddies of this evil empire along the way. The final boss of this part is this big turret with 3 cannons, which isn't the best boss and is quite boring. Luckily though, that was just the warm up, as we are then greeted by this big tank with a spiky mower thing on the front, which is much more like it. Awesome. The next level, we are riding back on the Dolphin, shooting at enemies riding minecarts. What kind of mining they are doing isn't clear, as they seem to be just carrying around various barrels, but who cares, shoot everything. At this point in the game though, one crack does appear, and that is there isn't a massive amount of variety. A game like Metal Slug manages to keep things fresh because you always have a new vehicle to use, some new mechanic. But Dolphin Blue is really just shooting the whole way through the game. We exit this mine after blowing up a chopper and end up at this dilapidated town. The action slows down a fair bit here, which actually makes it a bit more difficult. You see, although the game is a run and gun, it often plays more like a bullet hell shooter type game, where the objective is just to avoid all the projectiles being fired out by the hundreds of enemies, and this game does feature a lot of enemies at times. For some reason, I find it easier to dodge stuff when it's all moving quick, rather than when it goes slower, so this part was challenging. Getting through that town, we get to more of a city, where the water is all red for some reason. Spooky, right? Before facing the boss, a big train. I love the idea that even though most of the world is underwater, there are still train tracks, and this one with big rockets is obviously very important to keep going on such critical infrastructure. The boss itself isn't too challenging, and once it's been dispatched, we are greeted with another assault on a ship. This time it looks like we have some of our friends with us, which is cool and definitely helps set the scene of a battle better. Fighting through here we get our first platforming section, which was an interesting decision. I mean, it works fine on a controller, but I'm not sure how I'd have liked it in an arcade. I do like the scenery of this level though, and the emulator upscaling the 3D elements really does make it all look nice and sharp. After this we're back in the water, fighting a load of weird vertical ship things, before we dive and fight this little submarine with extendable arms. Pretty cool fight, I enjoyed this little battle. Beating that guy, we move on to the final mission, Mission 5. The baddies are now dressed up all in nice red uniforms. If you hadn't noticed, they actually changed their sprites slightly each level to represent the soldiers getting more elite, which is a nice little touch. This being the final level of an arcade game, it throws everything at you. Loads and loads of enemies, including tougher ones like tanks, turrets and artillery, and even moments where they rush you. I destroyed this big door and suddenly they all popped out of nowhere. Battling through the bunker, we get some more platforming in the first vertical sections of this game. Up until now, everything's been side to side, so it's a nice change of pace. After we get out of there, it's time to battle through literally hordes more baddies, many of them carrying these massive rocket launchers. They put up a good fight, but are nothing for my endless pockets of coins. We then make it to the boss, which is kind of odd. It's like this little dome thing that fires out rockets with a guy standing on top of it, and that guy every now and then rises on a platform which then smashes down. Really quite strange, not sure exactly what they was going for with this one. Blowing up that thing makes it seem like the enemies are all defeated, but they had one more trick up their sleeve. That thing flies. Taking to the seas for the final time, it's a battle between sea and air as we fight to defeat the evil empire. It's not a particularly exciting fight really, it has this lightning attack thing, but other than that, it feels somewhat generic. After that, the game is over. We rescued the princess and defeated the evil empire. The end. So, Dolphin Blue. It's a fun arcade experience and I really like the graphics. I think the sprite work and animations are excellent and the 3D graphics are clean and go well with the style. I like that there are loads of enemies on screen and all the different effects. What I don't like so much is that there isn't too much variety. Every level is pretty much the same. The game seems to look prettiest at the start and sort of tails off. Some parts of the game feel a little bit too hard, but that is common amongst most arcade shooters really. Overall, I'd say that Dolphin Blue is an alright game. It's worth a play, but it's not going to make anyone's best of lists anytime soon. If you want to see me talk about more stuff, sign up to my Patreon, subscribe and check out my other channels too. Goodbye.